This is Long Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelly Bidlin.
Hey, it is Long Shots, VSiN's golf betting podcast here on the VSiN Podcast Network. I am Matt Brown alongside Wes Reynolds and Kelly Bidlin, where we will take you through our thoughts and picks for the Valspar Championship over at Innisbrook Resort in Palm Harbor, Florida. But before we do that, a quick reminder, guys, everything we do absolutely free here on this podcast. So please go ahead, subscribe, rate, review. If you're watching us over on the YouTube, go ahead, hit that like button and let us know in the comment section how you are going to be betting this tournament. Guys, we were, fortunate enough, I guess I should say, to come out somewhat minimally damaged here or on the right side of things from this past week at the Players, despite the fact that obviously none of us had Rory getting it done, so I missed out on every outright. Russell Henley, top 10. Michael Kim, top 20, top 10. Doug Kim, top 40. But I at least got through with the Tommy Fleetwood, top 20. Aaron Rai, top 30. Berger did get it done over Tom Kim, and then thank God we got to a playoff in which we were able to bet one of the best golfers in the world, if not arguably the best golfer in the world right now, given the state of what's going on with Scottie Scheffler, versus a guy who had never been in a playoff before in not just a sudden death format, but a three-hole aggregate in which those three holes started out with a par 5, and he's the best par 5 player in the world, and then one of the most nerve-wracking holes there is in hole number 17 there on. So, I mean, Wes, as I look back on this, not my style to bet the super short shots. Anyone that's been listening to us for the last few years knows that. So if Scotty gets home, if Rory gets home, pretty good chance I don't have him. So I'm going to have to either, break even off of the, matchups and head-to-heads and things like that and placement markets that I've got going on, or fortunate enough to get into a playoff like we saw with this one and just load up on Rory.
Yeah, look, I thought Rory, if he hits his irons like he did last week, where I think he ended up 5th on approach, gained almost 8 shots over 4 rounds, then he's the best guy in the world. And we saw that last week. He also putted very well. So for me it was the placement markets that carried the day. I really had nobody in contention. Patrick Cantlay was on the periphery, and then he got to within 2 of the lead, and then bogeyed 2 straight, so he was out of it. But it was really the placement markets. I got to give a hat tip to our partner Kelly Bidlin here, because he was mentioning Siwoo Kim briefly on this Long Shots pod last week, and I thought, well, Siwoo Kim, when I'm doing my placement market stuff on Wednesday, well, Siwoo, good on Pete Dye. He's won here before. I'll play him for a top 40. I needed Birdie Eagle to get into the top 40 as he finished T38. That was the decider. That actually made me make a couple dollars last week, despite not having anybody in the mix. But yeah, Rory in the playoff makes a birdie on that par 5, and then JJ Spawn, you're one back of one of the best players in the world and one of the best players of the era, and he airmailed it on 17. He's like, that can't be that long, and it was, and it went right into the water, and J.J. Spawn was done in the playoffs. So best finish, I get. Well, he's won on the tour before, but it did put J.J. Spawn in the top 25 in the world, but obviously that's a very little solace when you can win the biggest event of your life. But Rory McIlroy, looking pretty promising. Maybe this is finally the year at the Masters where he breaks through. He's been trying to do it since 2015, win that career Grand Slam, and price got cut. I think I saw some 6-1 out there at some shops this morning.
Kelly, hat tip to the $1,000 Uber ride to get his old woods and everything back down to him. He didn't like the new version of TaylorMade's woods and fairway driver and fairway woods, so he got him shipped from his house. $1,000 later, he goes out, and I think he'll be fine after winning the Players there with that $25 million prize pool. So good on that Uber driver with that. But you and I were texting during the day. I know you ended up being able to turn a profit in this thing just because of the playoff as well. And, it's a deal to me. I know 150 isn't for everybody's bankroll, Kelly, but it wasn't sudden death. And the reason I was so adamant about Rory McIlroy, and anybody that follows me on Twitter saw, I said, hey, I respect J.J. Spawn in his game. I'm betting Rory McIlroy, and I'm betting him very heavily in this playoff, is because it was a 3-hole aggregate, and then you had to look at the makeup of the 3 holes as well, right? You start out with a par 5. Rory McIlroy is one of the, if not the best par 5 players in the world, and so he comes out with an instant advantage. Then you go to the one of the most intimidating holes in all of professional golf with a guy who's never been in a playoff before. Who's going to more likely to blink in that scenario in those amongst those two guys? And at that point, if the first two holes go like I think, then you just play 18 kind of normal, which is like what Rory did. You just play it kind of bland or whatever, and you go and you win the championship. And so, yeah, it's a different strategy if it's a sudden death type thing, but with it being a 3-hole aggregate and the holes that were involved in that playoff, it's why I was so confident in Rory there in that playoff.
Yeah, love it. Love that you texted me that it was minus 150 still at a couple shops, because I think it closed like minus 190 before we got to Monday at certain places, and everything you just said, right? I mean, the 3-hole aggregate, like, that makes a huge difference. Having a par 5 involved when those two players are going at it with each other is a huge difference. And look, it's no slight to JJ Spahn. He's a model darling, right? Like, we've talked about him for years on this podcast and have burned plenty of good money away on the guy. I wish I could say he's won me more than he has, but he's been bet fairly off. And so I think the only other thing was actually still a little bit of a small loser for me overall. One of those tournaments, look, we talked about it in detail last week, but with all the variance that comes into play with all the water, for me, it was dialed down a little bit on what you're betting on matchups and top 20s and stuff like that. And this is kind of the time of year where I usually I start sinking more money into those markets. And it's just good cap on a lot of these guys, because if I just kind of blanket bet top 20s on all of them, I would have had a great tournament. But some of these guys I chose just to go outright top 5 on or skipping matchups. It's just a little frustrating. But last point on Rory I just want to make, Matt, is when we do have these conversations about win equity, and I think you just broke down really, really well just at the end of the tournament and why that bet was good for the timing of it. But, we talked about it last week. I said 2 weeks ago, I was probably about as high on Rory McIlroy as I had been in a couple years. And then he didn't look all that great at the API. And you're hearing these stories about, we saw him struggling with approach. We heard the reports about the woods being switched out and stuff. And it's tough for me to go and approach and bet a golfer that's going through that type of stuff, no matter what their name is. But end of the day, that's the name that comes at the top of the leaderboard, because he's the class player left in the field that has a chance to go out and win it. And for a bunch of guys that kind of, I felt like we've had a few of these weeks this year that, man, anybody want to go win this event? Like, I know the conditions are rough, but does anybody want to go win this? And the class player is always the guy who hangs around like Teddy KGB, right? Just hanging around and then comes out on top. And that was what Rory did.
Well, we're staying in Florida. We're going to wrap things up here with the Valspar. We talked about that at Innisbrook Resort over in Palm Harbor outside of Tampa, the Copperhead course. If you go in, you look, guys, you can stay there. You can play. They have multiple courses, but this is the one they're going to be playing. Wes, we got a par 71 that's still pretty long with an interesting makeup. Not near as much water this week, though, as we saw this past week, but still a course that is going to challenge these guys a ton.
Yeah, absolutely. Innisbrook Resort and Golf Club, Copperhead course, tree line, positional type of course right on the Pinellas Peninsula. It's about 22 miles north of downtown St. Pete, west of Tampa. Originally designed in 1974, redesigned by Wadsworth Golf in 2015. It's kind of atypical of the usual Florida courses, though. It's very much... It looks like more of a course that would be in like North Carolina or South Carolina rather than in the state of Florida. But tree line fairways, elevation changes, dog leg, sometimes even double dog leg holes. So 73.52, same length as TPC Sawgrass for the players last week, but a par 71. You got water, not on every hole, but on 6 of the 18 holes, 74 bunkers. 5 par 3s, which is unique for a par 71, 4 par 5s, and then 9 par 4s. Of course, the signature, I guess, stretch of closing holes. We have the Bear Trap at PGA National. This time it's the Snake Pit, 16 through 18. Yeah, yeah. Get the hissing sound for the Snake Pit. I believe on that statue where they welcome, it says, and it names the holes. It says, "Are the most difficult holes on the PGA Tour play well?" On the Snake Pit statue, but. The 16th, long par 4, narrow fairway, water on one side. Then you got a par 3, 17, 215. Most of the par 3s are actually longer than 200 yards here. So you got bunkers, trees on both sides, and then the par 4, 18th, really difficult sloping green. You're going to get some high bogeys here. So I believe I looked and I saw that no player ever that has won the Valspar has ever played the snake pit under par for the tournament. So you are going to make bogeys here. You just got to minimize them. Fairways and rough, rye overseed. The greens are Bermuda, but it's a POA overseed. So now you get to this time of year with the weather in Florida where you get some of the Bermuda kind of creep through a little bit. But these are really smooth greens. These are some of the smoother greens on the tour, about 6,000 square feet on average, 12 on the stimp, so relatively average speed. They made it a little bit more difficult a couple years ago because if you recall, when you look at some of the winning scores, like it used to be really difficult in the early 2010s, and then all of a sudden after COVID, Sam Burns won this back-to-back year at 17 under par, where you usually never saw winning scores that low. You saw them like 8 under, 10 under, 12 under. So then what they did is they moved the rough closer to the greens here and make you chip out of that thicker rough. And as a result, you saw Taylor Moore, I believe 2 years ago, win at 10 under. Peter Malnati won at 12 under. So this course has some bite, and it is a little bit difficult here. I think if you want to compare Harbor Town, Colonial, I think is a good comparison where they play the Charles Schwab, TPC Southwind in Memphis, Country Club of Jackson where they play the Sanderson Farms, a couple of the other TPC courses as well. But won't be a birdie fest here necessarily at Innisbrook Resort.
Kelly, as we look at the odds board, you will see we do have some big names that are playing this event, but it is certainly not the quality of the field that we've seen here over the last couple of weeks. Tommy Fleetwood at the top of the odds board right now at DraftKings anyway, all the way down to 10-1. This was 14-1 yesterday, so Tommy Fleetwood taking a bunch of money here over the last 24 hours. Xander Schauffele, Sepp Straka, Justin Thomas, Sam Burns, Tom Kim, Michael Kim, Corey Connors, Adam Scott takes us out to 30-1. Everybody else 35-1 or longer. Kelly, when I look at this, you look at the field, and it's either guy. In my opinion, it's like why would you play this right after a couple of elevated tournaments in a row? This course is much harder, much more challenging. Wouldn't these guys just want to break? The field to me seems like guys that are either streaking right now and they want to stay on their hot streak, or dudes that are looking for something, right? And like you look at Xander, and he has not looked right yet. Justin Thomas, after this past week where the first round he was just spraying it all over the tee, and then it comes back the next day, shoots 10 under, then goes sprays it again on Saturday. Like he's trying to find some consistency. Obviously, Sam Burns, even despite his success on this course, is a shell of the golfer he was a year and a half ago as well. So it's kind of a mixture of dudes that are riding the heat like Michael Kim. I know he got cut last week, but hey, listen, you're not going to make every single cut. Corey Connors, obviously a good showing last week too. So it's just how we attack this board is going to be quite interesting.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on with that analysis. It's, you just look at the names, right? Okay, Fleetwood, Straka, Michael Kim, Corey Connors, those guys, Shane Lowry, running hot in Florida. Why not play one more here before we move on? And then, yeah, like you said, a lot of guys that are still just trying to find something in their game. So, yeah, interesting. Going to be an interesting week. I always find this an interesting handicap every single year because we really are. There's a lot of similarities from last week, right? I know it doesn't. Mm-hmm. I know it doesn't look like it, but for things that we're looking at statistically and course-wise, there are similarities from last week. You're going to have to be forced to club down off a driver on certain holes here. Driving distance is not something that's going to be able to really be used as a weapon for most of these guys this week. That's something that's similar. You don't have the water in play. All the grass types are the same, though. So, yeah, I think you hit it the nail on the head, Matt. I think for a lot of these guys, if you've been playing well, especially in Florida, yeah, you're carrying that over for one more week.
And you will get some variance, like in the winners, like when I look at the recent history, because I always put that in there because I want to see if we can get a clue of what type of player wins at a given course. Is it a bomber? Is it a good approach guy? Is it a good putter? You've got, I think, a little bit of variance here. Like Peter Malnati won this thing last year at 300-1. and I think has since missed like 15 of 19 cuts or something. So you'll get one off the radar. Taylor Moore was 50. Sam Burns won this back-to-back years in 2021 and 2022. Paul Casey back-to-back years in 2018 and 2019. Spieth, Furyk, like you've seen class players win here, but you've seen bombs win here, like Malnati, like Adam Hadwin back in 2017, like Kevin Streelman in 2013. So you do get, I think, a wide range of guys that have won here in terms of the type of player.
So started to put together the thoughts here. Kelly, you kind of dove into it a little bit as what we're looking for here from guys, and as we put together these models, and our disclaimer each and every week, we are not coders. We didn't code these models. We're using other people's skeletons and putting the information in, weighting that to how we believe to the importance to be, and then see what it spits out and kind of put us as a guide for what we're doing. We're trying to put together our betting card each week here on this podcast and over at VSiN.com. And so, Kelly, you talked about distance not necessarily being a thing. I didn't weigh it. As always, we'll use that disclaimer as well. As always, distance can certainly help if you're accurate with it, but I don't want it to be a separator for me this week. So I did look at just off the tee, but I did a whole bunch of weighted stuff this week as opposed to just like normal, because it's a pretty eclectic field outside of the top names and stuff. And so I did the weighted stats as opposed to just the blanket stats. And so weighted off the tee, weighted approach, around the green, things like that or whatever. And of course, with it being as difficult as it is, let's avoid the bogey. So bogey avoidance, there's 5 par 3s, so we might as well know how these guys score on those. The most scoreable holes are the par 5s, are the only ones that play under par on the entire course. And so that's pretty much it for the model for me this week. And then after that, it's, just good drive percentage. Can you keep it from spraying and giving yourself like pretty bad looks in? Because even though there isn't water, there is a lot of trees, there are a lot of dog legs, there is a lot of odd angles and bad positioning you can put yourself in if you're wayward off the tee. So that's kind of where I went this week. Did you emphasize any of this stuff maybe more than you would have maybe than the market does, actually?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of going back to last week. This is it's another heavy approach type model that we're looking at. Just a couple of the notes I caught from Ron Close, who does work over at BetSperts, in his article. And Wes, maybe you had these in yours too. You just posted. Sorry, I didn't have time to read yours yet. Okay.
No, I sent it a little late today.
But toughest course to gain strokes off the tee. So just keep that in mind for this week, and that speaks a lot to the distance, right? You're not being able to take driver out on every hole. You're not going to be gaining a ton. And lower only 2 courses on tour in regular rotation with shorter distance off the tee. That's Pebble and Harbor Town. So just something to keep in mind with what you're looking at off the tee. I attacked it very similarly as you did, Matt. I think if you are using sites like Rick Rungood, like we are, I think the weighted stuff is really important this week. I did the same thing because I think once you get down to the mid-range golfers, kind of that time of the year, right? We've played a lot of the signature events here back to back. We haven't seen some of the guys that aren't quite as good in a little bit, and you got to kind of parse through the data of who's played and who's played at what events here over the past couple months, because that definitely does matter. So look, really heavy approach for me. About over half the approach shots these guys hit are going to come for 175 plus yards. So tacked in the proximity buckets this week, 175 plus, 200 plus. That 200 plus kind of covers some of the par 3s as well, if you want to look at it that way. You've got 4 of them 195 plus, I believe. So that was part of the reason why I weighed that a little heavier. But yeah, otherwise, strokes gained approach, you hit on it, but off the tee, good drives, accuracy off the tee, but really light this week because guys are going to be using all kinds of different clubs off these tees, depending on the hole. Par 5s gained. Like you said, Matt, it's going to be really important for these guys to go score on these. Got to score on the par 5s. So wanted to factor that in, some scrambling and bogey avoidance, and that was my whole model this week.
Wes, like we say, approach the kind of building block usually for that each and every week. But did you do anything differently there, or is there anything that was more of an outlier as you were building your model?
Not a ton differently. I think approach is really your good baseline here. Going back to 2015, I believe the worst approach week was Malnati last year, and he was 20th. Like, he was still pretty good on approach, but I think he was like really at the tops for putting and then around the green as well, so that's what won him the event. So approach for me, 175 to 200, 200 plus. I think that's what you got to look at. You're going to have some long irons here. Good drives gained, I felt was probably better than going like pure SGOTT or something like that, because obviously good drives mean you could still miss the fairway and reach the green in regulation. These greens, by the way, not very big, so GIR you could maybe look at in context. Bogey avoidance, this actually Copperhead features the lowest birdie or better percentage of any course on the PGA Tour. A lot of that, too, is because of the snake pit, where you're going to make like really big numbers potentially at the end of your round. But you're grinding out pars, trying to avoid the bogeys. And then with the thicker rough being moved around the green, the scrambling has actually gone down here. It's actually decreased to about 60%. I think it was like 2/3 as of a couple of years ago. So I did look at a little bit of scrambling. You can also look at around the green. You're going to always see overlap, I think, between scrambling and strokes gained around the green. I did look at a little strokes gained par 5 because those are the 4 easiest holes on the course, or are the 4 easiest holes. So you have to be able to score. That's because you know you're probably going to give 1 or 2 back somewhere else. And then Kelly mentioned about the par 3s. 3 of the par 3s are 200 yards or longer, and the other is just under that at 195. So strokes gained par 3, 200 to 225, I think you could certainly look at. And then I did like a little baseline putting this week because it is Bermuda, but it's dormant, so it's a POA Triv overseed, but it's not like, the Torrey Pines or Pebble Beach POA, where it's pure POA. So These are really smooth greens. And if you look at the putting, Malnati, I think, was 3rd here last year. Taylor Moore was 9th in the year he won. Burns was 8th and 3rd. The only real outlier was Casey, who was 43rd in 2019, but he was also number 1 tee to green. So I think you want to look at a little bit of putting this week just for some context, and that's basically all I did.
I am going to be interested whenever we get to everyone's card here, because I'm starting to look around at some numbers that are available on certain guys, and it has been on the move here.
There was a bump today. I'm glad you pointed that out, because there was a bump today because of the weather. And I put that in the column. And look, the weather can change, obviously, but I was looking up at AccuWeather and a couple other different sites. The draw bias based on wind is going to favor the Thursday morning, Friday afternoon versus the Thursday afternoon and Friday morning. The early Thursday wind gusts are going to be at like 8, 10, 12, maybe up to 15 miles an hour. And I saw Thursday afternoon over 30 miles an hour. So, that's why I did look at that. Maybe I played a little bit too much when we get to our cards, a little bit too much of the draw bias. I think I have 1 in the afternoon, and I just played that on the bump because you did see some guys that all of a sudden, if you're looking, wherever you look, if you look at book by book, or if you look at like Odds Checker or something, you're going to see a lot of variance in some of these prices, and a lot of these afternoon guys certainly got bumped up, save for maybe a couple of the shorter price guys that are like top 3 to 5 on the odds board, but everybody else got bumped up.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting conversation. I don't know. I think this is the first time this is Tuesday afternoon Pacific time that we are recording this, just so everybody is aware. Like Wes said, the most important thing Wes said there is weather changes at the beginning. So make sure you check back in on this. I don't know how you guys do this. I don't know if we've really ever had this conversation. This doesn't mean necessarily that at this time I'm eliminating anybody that's in that afternoon start time on Thursday from my card, but I haven't bet them yet. I'm just telling you, I haven't made any of those bets yet. And the morning ones, because this does happen, and it doesn't get talked about enough, the bets I've made so far are in the earlier wave, earlier tee times on Thursday. However, even those guys, I don't bet fully. I've bet at least something on them now because I think numbers are going to get shorter. I've bet something on them now. I haven't staked them fully, though, of what I probably will have heading into the tournament, just because I want to see how this weather changes, if at all, over the next day and a half, 36 hours or so, before we got to lock bets in. So I don't know how you guys approach this. We haven't really had this conversation a ton. I know there can be I think it's something you have to factor into your handicapping when you're looking at golf and you're looking at wins like this on a Thursday, Friday. However, I think there's a lot of overreaction too when you start talking about possible draw biases here.
No, I think it's a great conversation, Kelly, because it is, again, one, these are forecasts. Two, there is while you don't want to be playing in 20-mile-an-hour winds for sure, if it's not actually blowing 20 the whole time and it's blowing more like 15 and the gusts don't actually hit that peak of the 28, 29, 30 and it's more just the 22, 23-mile-an-hour gusts here and there, yeah, it certainly benefits the earlier tee times. There's no doubt about it, but it's not so dramatic and so drastic that I would then at that point eliminate anybody from contention, because as you see right now, at least as it's forecasted, and Florida weather #handshake, it gets mild on the weekends, and so anybody around would still be able to do whatever they need to do. So yeah, I didn't eliminate anyone. The only thing I did do, and I'll just go ahead and I'll say, so I really want, so there's a matchup out there, Will Zalatoris and Sam Burns. And I think Sam Burns is a shell of the player right now than he was over the last year and a half. That said, Zalatoris has the afternoon wave and Sam Burns has the early wave, right? And so, in a head-to-head like that, I'll just pass on it, even though I really like Zalatoris over Burns. But given that Burns, I think, is going to start with a decent little leg up in that, I did pass on that head-to-head just due to the weather.
Playing the draw bias, I think, is probably better, too, if you're doing first-round leader. Now, if you're doing first-round leader market, you don't want a bunch of afternoon guys that you played, to fire your bullets. You want them pretty much in the morning. But it doesn't mean that a guy that's in the afternoon, that's in the poor end of the draw, maybe he's a few back going into the weekend. Doesn't mean that player can't make up ground necessarily once the conditions get good for everybody.
Yeah, the other, just to add on to that, Wes, the other thing, if you're just going to target first-round leader, guess what? You can put those bets in 3 minutes before these guys tee off, and you've got a much better idea of what that weather looks like for that round as they're trying to figure out what the whole 4 days are going to look at. So I think it's interesting. I think just to add on to what you were saying, Matt, as far as bets, there's one other outright that I bet that it's on the move. It's an afternoon guy. I'll just say it to Shane Lowry, but he's getting bet down, and there's still a 35-1 out there. Okay, I want to get that in, though, because I'm going to get that in because I don't want to be betting it at 20-1 and all of a sudden maybe this stuff clears up. If you guys watched, anybody who's listening, if you guys watched that tournament last week, too, guess what? These guys are damn good at being like, all right, there's a gust. Hold up. Okay, it's died down. Let's hit our shot. Boom, let's go. I mean, this is so kind of what you were saying, Matt. I know I've got the weather up right now, but is there a huge difference between, 18 miles an hour at 11 a.m. and 20 miles an hour at 1 p.m. With what these guys can do? No, I don't know, but it is something for you to be aware of.
A good point, too, is probably you're going to get a little more variance in the odds because obviously there's a big college basketball event that's going to start actually later this evening if you get it on Tuesday. So there's an NCAA tournament. So sometimes you get guys, it's kind of like when we get to the fall events for golf. They're knee-deep in football, both college and NFL. So they're not focusing as much. So some of these books are going to be quicker, and some of them are going to be slower to move any type of adjustment. So that's why, I usually don't see this much variance on the grid. But, you mentioned a player earlier. I'm seeing, Adam Scott at 50-1 some places and 30-1 at some places. So you don't typically get that kind of variance, even for what is not a major championship or a signature event, PGA Tour event. You usually don't get that, but you certainly have it right now, I think largely because of the weather and also because of the lack of focus, being that it's after a signature event and maybe some of the odds makers not paying as much attention.
So, guys, I threw in the stuff in my model this week, and I did, like I said, a lot of this was weighted in mine, and then I did a 30-round and a 20-round. Sepp Straka might be the class of this field right now, given how he's playing. He was number one in one version of the model, number two in the other version of the model. No surprise to anyone who saw what happened last week, and I'm glad I didn't have to eat my words. Alex Smalley is showing up, popping pretty good. Lucas Glover, who had a good showing, also showing pretty well. And then we get into again, the household names and Tommy Fleetwood and things like that. But my card is a little bit more spread out this week. Not that I think that there's going to be a ton of variance here, but I do think that the biggest of the big names scare me less than they do in a normal week. And so, if I think the class of the field is Sepp Straka, as good as he's playing, I'll take him on with some of these other guys is kind of how I went about all of this. So Kelly, you put the data in, you spit things out. What ended up on your card?
Yeah, Sepp Straka's damn good. Let's go at it head to head. Were you doing a side bet or something this week? Is that what's going on? Yeah, I bet him. 18-1. He's start him on the outright card. I bet him at 18. Okay. Look, I get it. The prices are getting short. It's what did we just pull up Tommy Fleetwood at 10-1? How many times has he won in America again, guys?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that because he was number one. Yeah, he was number one on my model this week. But it's like I'm not going to bet him at 10-1. I saw him at 10-1 at Caesars. Like, no, thank you. If he beats me, well done, Tommy lad. Congratulations.
It's tough because of everything you just said, right, Matt? It's some of these guys that have rated out highly for us for weeks, and we've bet them, but you bet them at longer prices, but. You do have to make the adjustment in your mind, right? Hey, this field isn't as strong. So, look, I got an 18 on Straka. I think he's mainly like 14, 15 in that range. I don't know. 18 was good enough for me. I did buy in on him. I played him heavier, though. Top 10, top 20. Top 20 even money out there at MGM, 2-1 in the top 10 market. Played him all the way down there. I mean, he's just... Again, very similar to last week, a lot of what you're looking for here. 17th in good drives, 10th on approach, good in those proximity ranges we're looking at, 10th in par 5 scoring. The results this season, one win and what are we talking about? 5 top 20s in the last 7 tournaments for him. It's pretty damn good. He's only played here twice, miscut. So a little bit of concern there. I don't think this is one that I need a ton of course history at, but, you always like these guys who have seen it once or twice, especially with all the dog legs you were talking about and stuff, Wes. I think it's important to get a feel for this stuff a little bit more. At least have him played once or twice. So Straka 18-1, and then Shane Lowry was the other outright I mentioned. Those are my only 2 outrights. I played Lowry at 35-1. Feels the same as what was it? The Cognizant we were having this same conversation. Like given the field, I don't really understand why he's that long. At a couple of the books. I mean, a lot of the other books, like you're saying, Wes, I've seen him at 18-1 and 20-1, so shop around if you're looking to get in on these guys. But I played Lowry and Straka in the outrights. Those are my only 2 outrights. I have a lot of finishing positions and tournament matchups. I don't know if you want me to roll through those now, Matt.
Well, we can swing back around to those. Wes, as you were building your outright card, what does that look like?
Yeah, and what Kelly said about Lowry modeled high, I did not play him this week. He is up to 35-1, by the way, at DraftKings as we record, so that's a big bump because I think he's in the afternoon. I mentioned Fleetwood, my number one in the model. Justin Thomas not too far behind. I just thought they were a little short. So we're going to start the card with 2 Kims for the price of 1 this week, Tom and Michael. Tom Kim, 33-1 at BetMGM. I think he's in the high 20s or around 30 at some places. First time playing here. I usually don't like first timers. He was T42 last week at the Players, but he did lead the field for approach. He gained almost 10 shots with the irons. And the putter, he lost 5 on the green, so that's why he didn't really finish up there. In the early draw, he's paired with Malnati and Burns, 2 of the last 3 champions here at the Valspar. This is positional driving. And I think that's the best for Tom Kim off the tees. Not really a bomber, but some of these positional courses, I think he knows how to attack. So Tom Kim, 33-1. Michael, who I got this morning at 40, I think he's still at 35 out there. If you look at the run of form, second at the Waste Management, T2, T13 at the Genesis, T13 in Mexico, T6 at the Cognizant. So it's like, okay, maybe the Players is where you want to back him. Well, he missed the cut by 1 stroke. He just was 1 off the number. But so I'm going to buy him on the dip here. He is striking the ball beautifully. He's really in probably the best form of his career. He's a one-time winner on the tour years ago at the John Deere Classic. But I'm going to buy, maybe zig when you're supposed to zag here, because a lot of people liked him last week and he didn't show. And look, there's nothing to be said for that. You're going to miss cuts at the players, and the wind was all messed up, and that'll really be evident by the next player I have on my card. The wind's kind of got him, these guys sometimes. So Michael Kim.
Wes, it's like it wasn't even a bad tournament, right? It's one bad round. He had a bad round, and he ended up around the cut line.
He was 75 in the first round, then he shot a good 69 on Friday. Some of these guys last week did get the bad end of the draw, and I think Michael Kim was probably one of them. And a guy that is going to be in the tougher end of the draw this week, but I said I was going to play him, and man, what a whirlwind this guy was last week. Will Zalatoris got bumped up to 45-1, and I just played the number because he's as low as 28. That kind of was like his opener, 28 or 30. And then because he's in the tough end of the draw, if you recall, if you were watching the weekend last week in between some college basketball conference tournaments, he was tied for the lead with 5 holes left to play on Saturday. And then you started getting 30-mile-an-hour gust winds, and he took a quad on 14, double bogey on 15, parred 16, double 17, and then bogeyed 18. So he was 11 under par, tied for the lead, finishes at 2 under, ends up finishing tied for 30th. But he gained on both approach and with the putter. So I'm going to actually buy on that. Even though he's in the bad end of the draw, I'm willing to kind of forgive that. He played very well and just had a bad stretch of holes. And, so maybe getting a little bit ignored this week. But I do like Zalatoris. I think he'll play well even in the tough
I got very
end.
close on him. Yeah, I got very close to pulling the trigger.
I go ahead and say, so while I bailed on the matchup, I did play Zalatoris outright, and it was like, I wanted some exposure to him. It seemed like if you were watching the tournament, I mean, it seemed like he's kind of started to figure things out again, and look, golf's hard. I mean, hashtag golf's hard, right? I mean, like, you go out, you have a couple bad holes, and it blows up your tournament. That's the way golf goes sometimes, especially on a course like that. A little less evident here on this course with something like that. So yeah, I did pull the trigger on Zalatoris. He is, like you said, Wes, on the bad end of the draw, if that matters to you guys out there. But the price was just not indicative of where I think he's at right now with his game.
Yeah, starting to show some real consistency. So I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe it's this week. Maybe it takes a couple months, but he's going to break through, I think, and get back in the winner's circle at some point. A guy trying to get in the winner's circle for the first time that was runner-up 3 weeks ago at the Cognizant, Jacob Bridgman. Let's call it about 60-1 on average right now. Second at the Cognizant, top 15 at the Arnold Palmer. Last week, he finished 50th at the Players, but he gets in the top 100 in the official world golf ranking for the first time in his career. So it's a milestone for some of these young players. He's just a guy in his mid-20s. 14th in strokes gained total, 17th in putting this season. Those numbers are better when you just take the players that are in this field, I think 9th and 12th respectively. But Jacob Bridgman, I think he could go well once again in Florida. And then a guy that's played well in Florida, but you really you get almost two different players when you look at this guy. When you look at his approach and off the tee, it's like, oh my God, how's this guy even on the tour? And then when you look at the short game, it's like he might be one of the best in the world because he has one of the best short games in the world. Christian Bezuidenhout, who I believe now is consensus 66-1, and I got him at around 70. 6 on tour for scrambling, 9th for putting, 11th around the green, top 10 here at Copperhead last year, 7th for a category that's called distance from the edge of the fairway, which I didn't model, but I looked at it this week. It shows that he's getting some of the proper angles even when he misses the fairways because the approach numbers are atrocious if you look at this guy for the season. But I can count on him being solid or rock solid and steady around the greens. Just needs to hit some better shots, and I think that he could and contend like he did last year. So Bezuidenhout, and then the 2 triple-digit guys, and I got him at 100-1. He was actually a little bit better at some places, but he was like in all of these stat categories, and I looked at the form, and I was like, well, what's going on? He really hadn't been in the mix that much this year. But Nikolai Højgaard at 100-1, who missed the cut at the Players last week, but 9th in bogey avoidance, 13th for approach, 17th for putting, leads the tour in greens and regulation, 2nd in 3-putt avoidance. He can hit the greens. He can grind out pars. He's a really talented guy. I mean, he's won big events in Europe, but it's a transition to be able to win on the PGA Tour. It is different, but if he hits all those greens like he does and grinds out the pars, I think he could hit some really good shots. So Nikolai, by the way, Rasmus is also in this field this week. So Nikolai Højgaard, 100-1. And then a guy you might have seen on the first page of the leaderboard if you tuned in on Sunday, never quite made a move because I was trying to think, okay, who do I want to take a shot at if I want to take on Rory? When Rory, I think, had a one-shot lead when we got the rain delay, and I was actually on a program on Sunday with Matt Brown, and I was and I know Matt had a little Tom Hoagie, hopefully he got in the clubhouse, and just was looking at guys. I was like, okay, who's down the board? And then I got a text from a friend after my spot, and I was like, well, how about Danny Walker? And now, Danny Walker never made a move. I think he ended up T6, 10 under par. PGA Tour rookie, earned his card this season. He was top 30 on the Korn Ferry list last year. 6 at the Players, actually his best career PGA Tour finish. Now, keep in mind, he's only been on the tour for 3 months, but he was second for off the tee. He was 6 in greens and regulation. He got the last spot in the field last week as an alternate and actually made the cut on the number. Talk about a guy who had a bad end in the draw and ends up in the top 6. So, worth a shot here at 125-1, I think, for Danny Walker. And, some of these triple-digit guys are worth it. I was trying to see who barely did not make the cut for me. I considered Matt Wallace. He was another guy I considered. He's in the early draw. He's actually had a couple good events here. I think he was 7th here 2 years ago. I did consider him. Also, Andrew Putnam did model kind of high for me, but ended up not going on the outright. Some of these guys, though, will be probably on placement markets for me.
Yeah, I did a weird. I bet this tournament weird. I couldn't decide how to do it, and so basically, I played the Zalatoris outright, and then that's kind of the way that I would normally play an outright, and then I took a whole bunch of other dudes, and then let's assume that your typical betting unit is $100 on a player or something like that. I'm basically taking 20% of that and then playing an outright with them and then putting 80% on a placement market on all these guys because I think their win equity is not great even if they get all the way up there, but I don't want to miss out on the long numbers attached to them. But again, my model gave me a bunch of guys with big numbers next to their names as ranking out very well, and you dig into their stats and you start to see why that they're showing up the way that they're showing up and the things that are going on with all of that. And so because of that, I don't have much of a choice here. And so I just played a bunch of placement market stuff this week, basically, more than anything else. But I played Zalatoris full staked on the outright. And then this is all a pool of guys that, again, there'll be some outright on these dudes, but it'll be various placement market stuff on them with all these. So Bridgman won as well, Wes, for me. Bridgman modeled out incredibly well for me. And you go in, you start to dig into his stats, and you realize why. Been really, really good. Joel Damon. Dude, Joel Damon's actually been playing really good golf, And so you go in and you look at Joel Damon, and I was really shocked as to what you're getting out of Damon right now. And, I think maybe just because of full swing, we kind of look at and certainly in a field of 20, in this. And so, a little smidge here and there, but he's really getting it done off the tee. And as we said, guys, hey, this is a positional course, right? If it's off the tee and approach, look what have you done for me lately? Well, look at those numbers right there, right? I mean, so keep it in the fairway. Get me on the green. Well, then we don't have to worry about your deficiencies around the green or whatever and all of that. And so hopefully you can figure out how to putt it in the ocean. And so Joel Damon, a guy for me that I was really shocked that he did as well as he did. Sam Ryder as well.
I also considered him.
Yeah, Sam Ryder, 12th in one of the versions of the model for me, 11th in one of the other ones, and you start to go across, and it's he doesn't do anything exceptionally well, but he is green, at least across the board in all the categories, and, that for me is always going to pique my interest with these guys when you go in and you start to look, and so Ryder's one of the guys where it's, Kelly, you're pulling up –
I hope he doesn't have to chip this week.
But see, this was what was interesting to me about this, right? So despite his off-the-tee struggles, he has figured out how to grind and scrape his way to not getting cut, and also still kind of climbing the leaderboard here and there. Obviously, the putter has been saving him in a couple of these tournaments, but again, we're not emphasizing the driver here in this tournament, and so let's see. Look at the Farmers, like. You got to be long at the Farmers, right? Like you got to be long at Waste Management. Like these are deals where we're not getting that out of this guy here. So I'm gonna trust the model here on this one. I didn't hate the stat profile, so Sam Ryder as well. Wes, you had a gut play, I think, either last week or the week before. The model, if I go a little further back, obviously stuff that we're dealing with that has to be drawn from way back, and then you see a little bit of success this week, but. I'm going to play Bud Cauley as well. Bud Cauley is green across the board. Now, these are being drawn, obviously, from a bit back because he's been dealing with injury and stuff and all of that. But weaker field, maybe riding a little bit of that big momentum heading into this thing. He is on the bad end of the draw, but if he can kind of weather the storm figuratively and literally, maybe we can get a decent little spike performance. But, again, this is less about the outright than it is about the finishing position market here. With Bud Cauley, but I mean, not a lot to hate right there, right? I mean, like you start to see, like, okay, you got cut in Puerto Rico. Do we really care about that? But you make the cut at the Cognizant, you make the cut at the Phoenix, you make the cut over at the Sony. I mean, like you're doing some stuff, and this is a guy that's still been working his way back and it's culminated here in a T6 at the Players. Maybe we can ride that momentum here into this tournament. So Bud Cauley.
How do you miss the cut in Puerto Rico and go T6 at the Players? Come on, man. Come on, Bud. Get it together, Bud. Terrible golf name,
Bud
by the way.
Bud might have liked the margaritas too much down there. So, who knows?
Bud had a good time.
Yeah,
Bud sounds like a good time.
Bud went on vacation down in Puerto Rico. All right, he came back to work at the Players. That's the way to do it. If you're going to pick one or the other to go on vacation, go on vacation Puerto Rico. Don't go on vacation at the one that has a $25 million prize pool. And then
Great
finally,
call, Matt, because God knows I would be a disaster at these places. Like Hawaii at the beginning of the year, oh, God, I'd be miscut every time. I'm going to spend more time on the beach.
Yeah. Oh, I skipped Michael Kim. Michael Kim, that's a top 10, though, not a top 20. That's a top 10 on Michael Kim because I'm jumping right back on the horse.
Yeah, we are. We all are. Let's go.
I'm not fading him. I mean, he's 6th in one model. He's 4th in the other. I mean, the guy's just been a model of consistency. I'm not expecting him to make every single cut. Like, it's not like he's an elite golfer, but
yeah, we're going to lose money at some point. But it was one bad round last week again. One bad round.
Yeah, like he's not super elite, but he's good enough to, grind out these top 20s and top 10s and stuff. And I think in a field like this, maybe a top 10. So I'm going to play kind of the higher end of the tails for him. And then Wes can probably speak to this fella better than me, but I always dig into the model and see guys that the reason that they're not ranking highly is just because they don't have enough data. And so there's always guys that are going to be buried that you're just never going to be able to fully get a grasp of what they've got going on. And one thing that I started to dig in, and Rasmus Niergaard Peterson.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A 25-year-old who has had a pretty decent amount of success over on the European side of things. He did go down to Puerto Rico and finish 2nd there in that one, gaining 13.5 total strokes. We don't have full strokes gain data from that tournament, but you start to look at these stat profiles on this guy, Wes, and like he does a lot of stuff really well. And so why don't we spike here in this tournament with old Rasmus? So throwing in a ticket on him as well. And again, a lot of placement market equity on him.
He's a young Dane, and there's a lot of good young Danes in the game now. Of course, the two Hoygaards, but played at Oklahoma State. Actually got, we talk about with the Corn Ferry Tour, if you win 3 times, you get what's called the Battlefield promotion. Mm-hmm. Well, he got that on the Challenge Tour last year, and got to be on the DP World Tour. I believe he's already got a couple runner-ups. He's got some amateur pedigree. He's played on a lot of those European teams, the Arnold Palmer Cup, and were these amateurs, the boys team championship. So this is a guy, he hadn't won yet on the big tour, but you feel like it's kind of only a matter of time. Guy's got a lot of talent and played at a good program in Oklahoma State. So I could definitely see him going well here. So a
lot of green on there, Kelly.
Yeah,
see, look at that screen.
Yep, you're getting a lot of these Europeans
lot of
over
green
here.
on that screen.
These Europeans that got in as top 10 rankings. on there that weren't otherwise eligible. They get into some events. They don't get the full status, so they've got to take advantage, and maybe Nearguard Peterson's going to do just that this week.
Not good enough for a headshot yet, though, at least from Rick Gaiman. Not good enough for that.
Oh, one thing I do want to jump in and mention on Michael Kim, who Matt and I are both playing in some regard this week. Michael Kim right now is like 54th in the world in the official world golf ranking, and the reason why that is kind of relevant is because I believe if he gets in the top 50, if he doesn't have it already, I'm trying to check his eligibility, he gets into the Masters. So he's got a couple weeks before he does that. So you've got to be in that top 50 if you haven't won, if you don't have eligibility otherwise, by April 1st, I believe. So I was looking on the list. I was looking on my Masters eligibility list. He is not in yet. But if he gets another really good finish, like he's contending for a win like he did a few weeks ago, he's going to get in the Masters. So you got to get in that top 50, and he is just right outside. So a little bit of extra motivation never hurts.
Yeah,
Kelly, what about that placement market stuff for you?
Yeah, a great call there, Wes, because that is he ain't. I mean, we were talking at the beginning. Hey, some of these guys aren't going to stop because they're hot. He's hot, but he needs to keep picking up.
And he's going to be playing every single
yeah.
week too. So he's going to be playing in Houston and San Antonio, trying to get that Masters invite.
Yeah, make it 3 for 3 on Michael Kim. I'm right back on him too. Top 10, top 20 for Kim. For me this week as well. It's kind of funny you bet them both, Wes, because I actually ended up with Michael Kim in a matchup over Tom Kim. So Tom Kim got to prove it to me a little bit more where his game's at. But I hear you. This course designed well for his game. The approach stats last week did look great for Tom. So we'll see if he can keep it up. Okay, so. I did bet Fleetwood. I bet him top 10, top 20, though. I scaled down to there. Played it's plus 140 on the top 10. I laid minus 140 on 40 on the top 20. I'm okay with that with this week with this field. It's like we said, there's not a lot of class players in this field at the top that I'm really worried about. Fleetwood has been incredibly consistent with the iron play.
He's the best player that can't win. Like he's just the best player that can't win. He's the most consistent best player that cannot win. It's
America and Canada, because that sucked last year.
Yeah, he just can't win. The guy can't. It's fine. Yeah.
Top 10, and then hey, I am so. This is a big moment on the pod, at least for me. I'm finally on the same page with Wes Reynolds on a Højgaard brother. So Nikolai. I played a top 10 on him, Wes, so I might have to add to the outright. I'm not missing out on the Højgaard party. I couldn't even believe we got the same Højgaard. So great. Same sort of thing. I was doing the same thing, and if you use a lot of the websites we do, I forget which one you brought it up, but it's a great point of just kind of scrolling down and being like, all right, like, so maybe not a lot of tournaments that this is getting added up to, but man, these are some good numbers. And yeah, Nikolai was one of the guys that jumped out to me, Wes. So I'm in on a top 10, and I think I'm going to go out and outright, so you're not partying without me at the end of the week. So top 10s on Fleetwood, Straka, Højgaard. Again, Straka I did bet an outright on. Then top 20s, Fleetwood, Straka, and Michael Kim. And Michael Kim in the top 10, too. I missed him. And then tournament matchups for me so far, Michael Kim over Tom Kim. Smalley, who just won't go away. I don't know that this is the perfect course for him, but man, he has been consistent as hell this year. I laid minus 120 over in a matchup over Victor Hovland. Hovland looks lost right now. That was a
I will bet that too.
That is that Circa. That is that Circa, my friend. And then another one.
I will play Smalley over Hovland all day long.
Yeah, another one that jumped out to me you might be interested in, Matt, because I believe we brought this name up last week. He kind of was popping in all our models, and yeah, he's kind of top 15 again. Not in love with him enough to go bet a top 20 or top 10 or an outright, that's for sure. But Grayson Sigg, plus money over Matt Kuchar? I don't know if I've seen Matt Kuchar in like 7 months. So I know he actually has played, like looking into it. But Grayson Sigg, like good approach numbers. I'm getting plus 102 on that matchup bet. That was one that really jumped out to me as well. So a couple matchups I really like this week in those two. Smalley over Sigg.
Did Kuchar have a hole-in-one this past week?
Smalley over. Did he? I totally missed it if he did.
Didn't he? Who had the hole-in-one?
This is the tiebreaker here.
I'm trying. I know what you're talking about. I'm trying to remember. God, I'm trying to remember. We know our guy Toasty had it in the practice round.
Yeah. I saw that one. It was a damn practice round.
Yeah,
it's got to be on Google somewhere. I see these two actively working on it. So yeah.
Because I'm trying to remember.
Sorry, Cooch, if I sold you short. I
think I even saw the shot, and I can't remember for the life of me. Keegan Bradley. It was your boy Keegan Bradley.
Oh, Keegs. That's who it was.
How dare you?
Yeah,
How dare you? My God.
Okay.
Who I am shocked is not playing here this week.
On this podcast, Matt Brown just confused Keegan Bradley with Matt Kuchar?
I was thinking of old guys. I was thinking of old dudes that still play golf, whatever.
Old dudes, there's like a 20-year difference there. It's maybe not that much. Sorry, Matt Kuchar.
I will say one other matchup that did at least pique my interest that is being offered in faraway lands, and I don't know if it will pop at any of the books over here. If they do, that would be interesting. Is they're posting Smalley versus Clanton. And again, I like Luke Clanton's game. I think he's going to win a bunch of tournaments later on in life. But Smalley's on this uber heater right now, and I would play that again. But that's in faraway places. It has not been posted stateside yet. But sometimes they're late to the party on some of these matchups. We don't get them until a little bit later. So we'll see how that pans out.
I'm surprised. Other guys I wrote down. I did want to bring this up because these are guys that I'm still considering bets on. I'm a little surprised Matt didn't go back to Justin Thomas this week, but maybe he's just sick of him. I think you're getting 20-1 plus on JT. Just the guy he's been over his career with this field. I'm okay anybody out there looking at JT bets this week. I didn't do it. I don't think I'm going to get there, but I understand. Go ahead.
I am looking on my screen right now, and at the South Point right here in Vegas, and also some faraway places. Justin Thomas is as high as plus 140. I'm assuming this is accurate against Tommy Fleetwood.
Wow.
Interesting.
If that tickles your, and I think plus 135 at station casinos.
Yeah,
whereas
I'm not going
Tommy
up
is
against
minus
Fleetwood,
165.
Did you say you bet Glover?
Yeah, I know, Matt, but I looked at that price. I was like,
what's that?
Did you say you bet Glover? Lucas Glover?
No, I was saying he was top 5 in every model, everything. Glover ranked out super, super, super well. Yeah, I'll tell you why I didn't go back to JT. I got to see some sort of consistency from JT. He's good one tournament off the tee. He's terrible the next. He's good here. He's terrible the next. All these different things going on. Then the putter completely fails him. Then he can putt again. He can do whatever. I like it better when one part of someone's game is faulting them, and it's okay, I know they can concentrate on that and try to get better at that. I don't like when it's all these different things here and there that are all disjointed, and then I don't really know what the dude's working on or what he's thinking or whatever. So I don't know. I need to see. If I miss out at 20, then whatever, so be it, I guess. Yeah,
one of the other guys that this is probably the one guy that I'm close to. Look, he's all these names that I'm listing are in the afternoon tee times, so I'm kind of waiting to see what this weather does too. I didn't love any of them enough, obviously, to run and make a bet anyways. Jake Knapp, though, is another one. Just look at what he's done with approach numbers recently. It's pretty hard to ignore, and I know we're taking driver out of his hands a lot on a lot of these holes. I don't know that I care that much, though. It's just what he's done with his irons recently has been so damn good, and he's pretty long, and again, in a field that's not all that strong. So he's one I might get to the window with here before
Jake Knapp plus 135 in a matchup against Victor Hovland. I am seeing at BetMGM.
Okay, thank you, Wes.
That might have been a draw bias move, I think, because I think Victor's in the morning. But, yeah, Victor Hovland is chalking a matchup really against anybody.
Right now, I know. Now.
Although maybe he'll surprise and play okay this week. I'm not going to wait on it anymore because I know the guy's got the talent, but he doesn't have it in the brain right now. And until he figures that out, I can't play him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the only guy that if he wins this tournament that I'll be upset with will be Rico Hoey. He modeled extremely well for me. And you go down, but then you see this is almost ridiculous. So you go back to January, lost 7 strokes putting at the Amex, 4.6 at the Waste Management, 3.5 in Mexico, 6.9 at the Cognizant, and then last week 7.1 at the Players. We joke about some guys that are team no putt and can't putt. That is the worst putting profile over the stretch of that I've ever seen. He lost 7 strokes 3 different times in the last couple months, like putting. This is unbelievable. Like, it's crazy. Is he putting wrong-handed? Do we know? Like, is he actually should he be putting with the other's hand or something? Like, I don't
stop using your 9-iron.
Yeah,
Victor.
like what
Come
do you do? Yes, you are allowed to use a putter. Like it's you don't have to use the little rubber one that you get at the putt place. Like you can actually get a good one, dude. This is like
God,
unreal.
it's so gross. It's so gross. I mean, the only thing to be scared of is just like the approach numbers are still pretty good, but
Yeah, it's pretty
so
wacky.
much red. Oh.
All right, guys. Well, as we said, everything we do absolutely free. We do appreciate the support here of the podcast. So all you got to do is hit the subscribe button. That's all we ask. That's it. That's all we ask of you is hit the subscribe button. We do appreciate that. And of course, if you're on the YouTube side of things, hello, this is how we look. And you hit the subscribe button there as well. And then give us a like and then let us know in the comment section how you are going to be attacking this tournament. You can go to VSiN.com right now. It is Sharp Week. It's a playoff Shark Week, if you're wondering. Like if you've been listening to us say it all, is it Sharp Week, Shark Week? And so that's a playoff of that. I got to thinking about that. Like if people are just listening to us on the audio side of things, and they're not seeing the graphics like on television,
that's a good
like,
point.
they probably have no idea what we're talking about. So it's a playoff Shark Week. There's graphics on the video side of things. You'll get it if you go over there.
They're graphics that make more sense. You're right.
Yeah.
It might be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. So $9.99 for the first 30 days. Probably no better time because you're going to get our betting guide for the tournament as well as all the picks for the tournament to go along, of course, with all the stuff that we're putting out for golf and everything as well. So take advantage of that. $9.99 over at the site right now. For Kelly, for Wes, I am Matt. Good luck on all your Valspar bets.
Yeah. Make some money. High Point's going to win the national championship.